Most bosses love data. Color-coded spreadsheets, PowerPoints, one-pagers, pie chart breakdowns. They love it all. And why wouldn't they? With many people reporting to them about their projects, people, and processes, data can help them gain a little understanding and get up to speed in an instant. Many communicators, however, aren't so in love with reporting data. More and more, internal and corporate communicators are being asked to tie their work, activities, and campaigns to desirable organizational outcomes. For some internal communicators, roadblocks keep great measurement out of reach. It can be hard to know what to measure. What really matters to your organization? What happens if the data reveals a shortcoming in your communications? Plus, there's the matter of your never-ending to-do list. Where can measurement fit in? Today on the Internal Comms Procast, we're joined by author, speaker, teacher, and CEO Angela Sinickas. Angela brings real stories and practical tips from her decades-long career helping communicators master measurement. She will show you how to start or deepen your relationship with analytics and how great measurement can help you become a more valued partner in your organization.
And the future I see is that communicators are seen as a business partner with business leadership, not just someone to call in to write a story about something after it happened or write a story to prepare people for something.
The Internal Comms Procast is sponsored by Circle. Circle's engagement score is a real-time look at the interest level of your employee audience as a whole and as individuals. Watch engagement grow as your Circle personalized email, app, and intranet give new life to your communications. Circle makes measurement easy for communicators around the world. Request a demo at cerkl.com. Circle, personalization automated. Welcome to the Internal Comms Procast. I am your host, Barry Williams. Today's guest is known as the Queen of Measurement for good reason. Her prolific publications and speaking engagements in 32 countries have made her name synonymous with measuring the business impact of organizational communication. She is the author of How to Measure Your Communication Programs and has been a regular columnist for Strategic Communication Management. She also serves on the editorial boards of 2 professional journals. Her work has been recognized with 21 IABC Gold Quill Awards, 6 of them for measurement. And in 2008, she earned the high honor of being named an IABC Fellow.
My name is Angela Sinickas. I have my own consulting firm called Sinickas Communications, Inc. The only thing that I do is research and measurement for corporate communications. And of course, strategy that comes from the measurement or developing dashboards about the measurements, but it's all research and measurement 100% of the time. Even though my background is in journalism and I've had many jobs in corporate communication, this is the part of what we do that I just felt passionate about.
Angela has been measuring the effectiveness of communication since 1981. Her first taste of the power of great internal communications began at a very young age and made a huge impact.
Well, my first experience was fairly young. My mother worked for Campbell's Soup Company, and every month this magazine called The Harvester would come to our home. And I remember being absolutely in awe that there would be a publication just for people who worked at a particular company. So I was kind of exposed to the concept of internal communication early on. But when I was majoring in journalism, I had an opportunity to get a part-time job at the medical school. And that was both internal and external communication and community communication. So that was really my first exposure to it. And I never looked back. That's what I ended up doing. I never worked in legitimate journalism.
Though measurement is Angela's passion, she understands some of the reasons it may not be yours.
I think because they think it has to involve a lot of numbers. And for a lot of people in communication, they went into communication because they knew they wouldn't have to take calculus or statistics. So when they hear that now they have to do some kind of research and measurement to prove the value of what they're doing, they kind of panic without even realizing it doesn't have to be that numbers heavy. And if you can use a calculator, which most of us have to do, you can do this kind of evaluation of what we do.
One roadblock for many communicators is knowing what to measure. What we often start with, activities, doesn't help us with our goals. The key, Angela says, is to focus on outcomes.
I think the easiest thing to measure is our activities. But when we measure only our activities, it just shows that we're being really busy. Like how many articles did we write? How many conversations did we facilitate between leaders and employees? But what we have to look at is the outcomes of those activities and connect the activity to the outcome.
When thinking about which outcomes to measure, it can be a bit overwhelming. After years of practice, Angela has it down to a simple list of 3.
So the 3 types of outcomes I really suggest we look at is, did our activity increase people's knowledge? Did our activity improve people's attitudes about the topics we're writing about? And most importantly, did it change their behavior? Because behaviors have a financial value. Knowledge, attitudes, they don't. Until we actually change what employees are doing, we're not having a financial impact on the organization.
Angela says the last item on her list of 3, a measurable behavior change, is the most difficult to connect your work to.
On the one hand, behavior is very easy to measure because typically the most important types of behaviors for employees are already being measured by other functions. So HR will be measuring turnover, production will measure things like safety and productivity and quality. So the activities themselves are being measured. What makes it hard is we have to show that something we communicated affected those behaviors. So it's making that connection that's difficult.
Although it won't be easy, connecting behavior change to communications isn't impossible. One way Angela recommends is a pilot program.
When I was working back in the corporate world, one of my communicators in one of our business units thought that she had some good ideas for improving safety communication. And this was a company where we had lots of vehicles. Salespeople drove their vehicles. We had installation and service people driving trucks. We had patrol officers riding out to people's homes if they had an alarm activation. So we were having lots of vehicle accidents. But instead of just doing some kind of communication and hoping it worked, we had 7 units, 7 different branches, and she worked with a safety manager to pick 3 branches that on average had the same accident rate that the other 4 had. And for 1 year, all she did was do the safety communication differently with those groups. The way they used to do it was just going on everywhere. Well, at the end of the year, the accidents went down, but only in those 3 branches where she was actually working on it. And this had a huge financial impact because those reductions in accidents led to a $1 million reduction in the insurance premium for the company. Now, you can bet that the CEO noticed this. So we could do a purposeful pilot, and that's the easiest way to do this. I mean, that's what drug companies do. They do clinical trials where they give people one drug or they give them a placebo. We can do this in communication very easily. And notice it required no math because the accidents were already being measured by somebody else.
No matter the size of your organization, there could be some managers at the top or on the ground who aren't internal communication true believers. Instead of getting mad, Angela suggests you get measuring to help demonstrate your value.
Now, on the other hand, sometimes we have accidental pilots going on that we didn't even realize. So, for example, you may have had a campaign that you intended to be done the same way throughout the organization. But some leaders like to do things their own way. They'll say, oh, no, that's a waste of time, or I don't want employees to go to that meeting. It'll reduce their productivity. So when we find out that the results, those changes in behavior are different from location to location, all we have to do is a little bit of research to figure out where they did and did not use our campaign the way it was meant to be. And if, in fact, the results were lower in the places where they chose not to use it or didn't use it right, we have a pilot study. We never intended for it to be one, but it is one. We can harvest that kind of results years later, as long as we just have those access to those numbers for behavior.
Many communicators use surveys as a way to measure the efficacy of their work. Angela suggests you take a more strategic approach to what you ask.
Now, another way to do it is a survey question. So we often ask a lot of survey questions, but we're typically asking questions about what people like about our communications. Do they like the length, the timing, the content, the format? What we need to do is connect our communications to those behaviors through a survey question. So for example, I had one client still talking about safety where they had done a very intensive 1-year safety communication campaign. And then when we did their big annual communication survey, one series of questions said, here's a number of different safe working behaviors. Please check mark which of these have you paid more attention to this year because of the communications you read about it this year. So the survey question itself makes that cause and effect connection. So what we actually found that there were certain behaviors that communication impacted more than others. The other thing we did is we compared it to the reality of what percentage reduction they had in those different types of accidents. And lo and behold, it turned out that the types of behaviors that people said they were paying the most attention to those were the types of accidents that had the biggest reduction in accidents. So a survey question can do that for us. And sometimes it's just looking at correlations. And I don't mean statistical correlations. I mean just looking at reality correlations. So for example, I had another client where one of the questions we had on the survey was, how well do you understand the company's strategy? And as you would expect, there was an average percentage for all these 13 different regional units for this retail company. But there was one group that was the best informed and one group that was the worst informed, and that kind of average bell curve with most people somewhere in the middle. But what we looked at that and compared it with was profitability, because profitability is also measured by region in a retail corporation. And again, lo and behold, the one region that had the best understanding of strategy was the most profitable. But then we looked at the other end. The three that were the least understanding of strategy were in the bottom 5 of profitability. So when you have this double kind of connection, it's called a correlation. It still doesn't prove cause and effect, but just looking at that kind of thing, some survey results you might already have with some business results that are already being collected by someone else, you can start finding some very interesting correlations that will convince leaders that something you're recommending they do will help their business results. So it doesn't have to be that hard, and it's not that numbers intensive, but those are really useful tools.
Another common roadblock for communicators trying to measure their outcomes-driven communications is access to data. Some organizations are lucky to enjoy a deep camaraderie. Resources, information, and data are shared openly between departments. Many are not so lucky. Departments hide their research and information. Data sources and measurements are not shared, or things are kept secret. To avoid duplicating work or measuring the wrong thing, you are going to need access. If you need data to get a job done, Angela suggests you start negotiating.
So yes, that often does happen because people are very jealous of their data. But if you're trying to help some other unit improve their results, the trade-off is, look, I can help you with your results, but I need to know what those results are, and I need to know what's leading to them. Otherwise, I can't help you. So if you don't want my help, fine, I'll go away. But if they really do want your help, they need to give you that trade-off. The other thing is we sometimes don't need the intense data. So let me give you 2 examples. Back with that example of profitability. In that company, they did not want to share. It was a privately held company, so they really were very protective of their financial data. So they did not want to tell us what the absolute profitability numbers were for each of those 13 different regions. But what they agreed to do was give us a listing from most profitable to least profitable. And that's all we needed. So that they didn't actually have to share the numbers. They just had to share the relative rankings. So that's a perfect example of how you don't actually have the raw numbers. Now, another example, when I was back in the corporate world, we had a company where we did a customer satisfaction survey. And we had, as you would expect, some really positive numbers and some really low numbers. Now, we wanted to share with employees what some of those results were, because what affects customer satisfaction? Customers' interactions with employees. So if employees don't know what they're doing that's causing a bad reaction, they'll keep doing it. So that was our logic for why we need to communicate to employees what they should do differently. But the people on the operational side were very concerned because, well, if we publish these numbers in our employee publication, you can bet that it's going to get into our competitors' hands and they're going to use it against us in advertising or promotions or just sales calls. So again, what we got them to agree to do is to say, look, any survey is going to have a highest score and a lowest score. So without saying how high the high scores were or how low the low scores were, we were able to tell employees these 10 things are the things that customers like the best about what we're doing. Let's keep doing it. On the other hand, these were the 10 things that had the lowest scores. Not that they were really, really low, but they were the lowest. So these are the 10 things we're going to focus on for the coming year, and we're going to need your input to brainstorm how we can do better on them. So those are 2 different techniques for getting access to that information. It might not be the actual data, but if they actually want to be able to prove that we're making a difference and helping them make a difference so that they get credit from their leadership, then they do have to share the numbers in a little bit more transparent way with us. But we may not publish them, but we need access to them.
More with Angela Sinickas after this break. Internal Comms Pro is proud to present the Rise and Shine series, coming to a city near you. Engaging and energizing, Rise and Shine events are designed with the IC Pro in mind. A featured speaker kicks off the event with a talk about the most current strategies, tools, and best practices. Then a panel of experts share how they applied the speaker's topic in their own organizations. You will leave with new ideas you can actually implement that next day. Rise and Shine is free to attend, but spots are limited. See where we are going to be next and join the fun for free at internalcommspro.com/shine. If you're getting nudges from other departments for new initiatives, measurement strategies, or messaging that you don't completely agree with, Angela suggests you take the time to understand what the goal is before you go running 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction. For her, project success boils down to 3 memorable words.
Ask more questions. So I learned something once in a consulting sales training course. It's called the rule of 3. So if you ask somebody a question, whether it's an executive or this eventual consumer of communication, they'll give you an answer and it'll be a real legitimate answer, but it might not be the deeper answer. So what you have to do is find a way to ask that next level of the question and then the next level of the question, and you'll start getting at a real issue, and that'll change the way you're going to be communicating. Because if you just start with that first surface issue, you might write something and then the executive will look at it and the executive will change it because they didn't really clarify in their own minds what it was that needed to be communicated and why, with what intended impact. So if you just ask that rule of 3 times to really get at an underlying issue of why something is important or exactly why this particular thing needs to be communicated, it will save you time down the road. Just as one quick example, I was working back in the corporate world, and the executives wanted me to do a financial literacy campaign for one group of our employees. Those employees were nurses. And when I asked that rule of 3, the reason they wanted to do financial literacy is they thought nurses were making too many unnecessary visits that we were not able to get reimbursed for from insurance companies. So once I understood the real behavior they were trying to change, I never did a financial literacy campaign. I simply had the nursing managers in weekly staff meetings talk to their nurses about 2 different behaviors we wanted them to do each day when they saw their patients. And both of them were consistent with good patient care, which is all they care about. They don't care about profit and loss. So once I understood what they were really trying to affect, I was able to save all that time in doing a useless and expensive financial literacy campaign. And within 1 week and at no cost, I started solving their business problem. So that's the best time-saving tool. Ask more questions, ask them more deeply.
Some of your measurement missions may turn up shortcomings in your communications, channels, or coverage. Angela advises to not let this possibility deter you. Instead, let the data serve as fuel for the changes you know need to be made.
So that's a really tricky thing. I think that's one reason a lot of communicators are a little leery of starting to do measurement, because what if it shows that they're not doing a good job? Well, in my experience, other than one survey that I'll tell you about in a minute, every survey result has some things that are going really well about communication and some things that could be improved. So it's never going to be a complete washout. The one experience where that was not true was an organization where I had to call the client in advance and say, I have to warn you, these are the lowest scores I've ever seen, and they're low on everything. And my client said, oh, yay. And I went, what? She says, well, we've been trying to justify getting a full-time internal communication person at this organization for a long time. These low numbers will give us that justification. So, hey, that was great. That was fun. Then the lower the numbers were, the happier I was. But that's not usually the way it is. So now let's say you do get your results back and some things are low. You've got 2 options. One, you don't actually have to tell leadership about every single measurement that you've ever collected. You could just hold that in your back pocket and try to do things to improve it so that a year or 2 later, you can go back and say, look, here's what we've been doing. Look how successful it's been. We went from this low score 2 years ago to this high score right now. So we need to keep doing more of this. So that's the other way to look at it. It's just a baseline for improvement, that you might be starting out low, but it's probably because you haven't really done anything to try to make that a better result. So the things you've been working on, you will get good results for. The things you've been ignoring or management hasn't wanted to provide resources for, those are the things that'll be low, but that's okay, because that'll be that justification to get those more resources, more focus, more attention paid to that thing.
No matter where you are on your measurement journey, it can be easy to get discouraged or to be bogged down by heavier parts of the measurement process. Angela encourages communicators to reshape how they look at the task of measurement. You've actually been training to be awesome at this your entire career.
I think maybe we have to stop looking at measurement as just measurement, because that's sort of after the fact. That's putting real numbers to something after you've communicated. One thing we're very good at as communicators is doing research. We have to do background research before we interview people. The interviews we conduct, those are research. So we do a lot of research right now before we end up writing anything. We just have to expand the way we're doing research, or who we do research with, or the questions we ask during research. So for example, let's say some leader has just given you an assignment for a communication project. You could just sit down and start developing your communication plan. Or you could do some research. You could go talk to 5 or 10 people who you do not know, who will one way or another be affected by this communication project, and ask them some questions like what they currently know about this issue, how they feel about this issue, where do they learn about this issue, how would they like to learn about this issue? Because that kind of research will change your first communication plan, because you will know more about the environment in which you're going to be communicating. You will know more about the stakeholders' connection with the topic you're going to be communicating, and it will make a better plan when you write it. So therefore, when you eventually do some measurement, you will have better results because you actually did the right campaign to change the right behaviors using the right messaging that will reach those people to get to those behaviors you would like them to change. So that, I think, is where we need to start, is do that research with people that are not the immediate people we'll be interviewing for an article, but the ultimate consumers of that information whose behavior we somehow want to influence.
We want to thank Angela for sharing her helpful and engaging stories with us this episode. For more of Angela's wisdom and tips, visit her site, cinecom.com. There you will find 150 articles about communication research and measurement Angela has authored over the years. On June 18th and 19th, she is teaching a 2-day masterclass in measurement for PRSA in Chicago.
And it's really a fun experience. Believe me, you'll have fun with measurement because there's a lot of exercises that we go through, and they're all applied to the actual type of work that the participants are doing of their own. So they're really walking out of that 2 days having already started doing some measurements and setting things up for the future.
She also offers online virtual courses through PRSA and IABC that you can take anytime. We will link them on this episode's page on internalcommspro.com/podcast. You know, since you're already on the website and everything, you should really sign up for our personalized newsletter. It's the one email you need to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the world of internal comms and employee experience. Next time on the Internal Comms Procast, we are discussing artificial intelligence's role in the workplace with the delightful Jason Anthoine. He will illuminate some unexpected uses for AI and how it can amplify a communicator's greatest asset, actual intelligence.
So, I know artificial intelligence is sexy and exciting and the newest thing, and that's great. It ought to be. We ought to be very excited about advancements like that, but it shouldn't come at the expense of actual intelligence and just really building great relationships with your employees and truly understanding who they are.
Internal Comms Procast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our executive producer is Rachel Foles. Connor Sweeney is our engineer, and Kelsey Rizzuto is our associate producer. Our theme music is Please Listen Carefully by Jazzer via the Free Music Archive. Our intro music is Sea of Glass by our audio engineer, Connor Sweeney. Show notes and more are available at internalcommspro.com.